Hi, I'm Trantor, and welcome to the Aura Finance Easter Update. It's been a few months since we last posted, but today we're going to go through some of the significant updates that are currently occurring with Aura Finance. We'll cover off on the LSD narrative, the liquid staking derivatives narrative, Arbitrum moves, hidden hand issues and how that was resolved in some recent improvement proposals, gravAura and jAura, which is basically, to my mind, the only way to do it in order to compound your Aura if you have less than 1,000 Aura locked. The new auraBAL compounder, which is some interesting stuff, and then what's happening in the background potentially with OM and vBAL. First piece to talk to is the liquid staking narrative. As many of you are aware, the Shanghai upgrade is close upon us, and what this is likely to do is enable significantly more people to actually get into the staked ETH sort of protocols and pools. This is likely as a result of the ability to actually insert and then withdraw your ETH whenever you feel like it, rather than necessarily requiring one of these LSDs, these liquid staking derivatives. Basically, what this will likely end up with is that all these different protocols, such as Lido or Rocket Pool or the Coinbase staked ETH, etc., there'll be a much lower barrier to entry now for new staking pools to come in because significantly more people will be able to do it. So this is likely to lead to two things. The first is there's currently only 15% of all ETH is staked into these proof of stake pools. This is likely to go up by a factor of at least, 2, 3, anyone's guess, right? But it's potentially 40 to 50% now of all ETH may actually be staked. This is likely to bring down the total APR for staked ETH, but is also likely to increase the competition, as now smaller staking pools are able to stand up their own sort of specific stakes, and this basically reduces that barrier to entry for everybody else to get involved. What will likely then happen is you'll see groups, I should say, like Lido or Rocket Pool, decreasing their own fees, which are currently 10, 15, 20%, decreasing those down to a much more manageable percentage, but also now rapidly trying to get significantly more deposits to maintain their profitability. Maintaining this profitability is something that really requires more and more incentives. And so having those extra incentives is a key thing here because that's how you attract more depositors, by having the initial stake that goes in, the amount of ETH earned, and then subsidizing that with additional governance tokens or whatever else. For that to be effective, you need deep liquidity, in particular, of course, on your actual LSD, so your Rocket staked ETH or your Lido staked ETH. But you also need the ability to actually incentivize those pools and to make sure people want to actually continue to buy your LSD product. This is where Aura fits in very well, as does Balancer, in particular with the boosted pools and how that sort of metastable composability sort of layer really fits in. You can have a quick read on the docs, of course, to find out more about each of those different pools, but it provides a lot of deep flexibility and deep liquidity for each of these protocols to basically build out their liquid staking derivatives. So once again, Aura seems to be pretty well positioned in this space to continue to benefit from not only the LSD narrative, but as this continues to evolve once ETH Shanghai upgrade has been implemented. Next thing I want to talk about is the impending sort of move across to Arbitrum. If you've been across onto Twitter at all, you'll have seen Aura in particular at the start teasing Arbitrum with their likely moves. But you've also seen some sort of fun welcome to Arbitrum and some other little cheeky sort of comments from the actual Arbitrum teams themselves, welcoming Aura Finance and Balancer across. This is particularly important because Aura Finance is bringing across their partnerships with Radiant, Lido, Beefy, potentially a whole lot of others as well, in their move across to the Arbitrum space. What's important here in particular is that each of these different groups who are getting involved with Aura are seeking the deep liquidity that a Balancer and Aura type of pools can provide. If you want to have leveraged trades, if you want to have any number of different DeFi applications, you need to have really deep liquidity to enable things like leverage. In other words, to enable you to get liquidated. But you need to have all that kind of capability and deep liquidity of different tokens and different pairings so that you can actually have these DeFi protocols take off. So not surprising you're seeing elements like Radiant and Beefy get involved because they want to see as much as possible deep liquidity to enable them to conduct DeFi on Arbitrum. Lido, and I can expect you'll see the same from Rocket and others, are then looking from a different angle. They want to see increased depth, really, and then increased composability for their own staked positions, their own LPs. So whether that's Rocket Pool ETH or wrapped staked ETH, each of these different pools, they want additional deeper liquidity for their tokens on on really a layer 2 Arbitrum here that is used by significantly more people in DeFi as a percentage than you can do on ETH. Now, the reason for a lot of that, of course, is that the TVL really on Ethereum is around 10 to 11 times larger than the TVL staked on Arbitrum. But Arbitrum has a daily sort of volume of fees and trades at already up to 50% of ETH. So in other words, and you can do the math separately, you've got something that's 1/10 the size, but does half as many transactions. So a really big indication of the DeFi and the potential for money to move around or tokens to move around on Arbitrum. This provides opportunity, not surprisingly, to get into that DeFi space. And this is where Balancer and Aura's boosted pools really will find a niche as they move across to Arbitrum in the coming days and weeks. The final thing to talk to here is Optimism. And you can see here, not only in the little picture, it talks about Polygon, Optimism, as well as Arbitrum. And I'll just quickly say, the Polygon link, I haven't really seen much apart from what's been sort of teased again between some potential NFTs and some other stuff going on with Polygon. That doesn't mean that there won't be integrations with Polygon at all, but clearly Tetsu and auraBAL already have a bit of a lead there in the Polygon sphere in terms of bringing Balancer across. Anyway, without getting down a tangent, the Optimism part is interesting too. So Optimism itself, as you're probably aware, currently is dominated by vlAura, in particular how they've been subsidized by significant OP grants, so OP grants that have come across to them. There is another player in the space, however, who's very much linked to Balancer and a friendly fork of Balancer, which is Beethoven. Beethoven itself is primarily a protocol built on the Phantom network, but they've expanded across to Optimism and are already part of what's occurring on Aura with some of the incentivized pools that you can actually have rewards given to you on Hidden Hand, for example. What you can expect, and will be interesting to see here exactly how this plays out, is when Aura does come across, Aura and I should say Balancer / how Balancer moves, how will the additional fees that go to Beethoven be played out? And most importantly, how will Aura seek to drag away significant chunks of that deep liquidity that currently exists on vlAura, and how will they bring that across to themselves? What's interesting, of course, is that vlAura is a solidly fork, that VE33 model. A solidly fork like that, or that type of model, very interesting. But again, they're 50-50 pools only. When you look at the Balancer sort of, different types of different weightings for pools available, you've got your boosted pools, you've got, increased composability, you've got a whole bunch of different options that basically Balancer Tech is able to bring. And that's the kind of real interesting innovation that's going to make the Optimism space, again, more interesting and provide that greater competition. Overall, this is a net benefit, I should say. This is certainly not a negative of vlAura, and I don't mean it that way, nor do I intend to say anything about really negatives on anyone. What I will say is that the more different DEXs, so decentralized exchanges, there are on a specific chain, in particular Optimism, which at the moment is dominated by one, the more there are, the merrier. And I think that provides additional opportunities for different builders to build and for new DeFi products to develop. So a lot of interesting stuff and a few developments to come out there. There's one other thing you might have seen in Discord lately, and there was a little bit of argument on Twitter about how this played out. And it was to do with sort of an emergency AIP, so Aura Improvement Proposal number 22, and the hidden hand issues. Essentially, a bug prevented the votes from actually going through from all those who had delegated their votes, that is their vote-locked Aura votes, who had delegated them to hidden hand. What that meant was that those who voted directly, they had their votes go through and then got their incentives. But everybody who had delegated basically to, redacted to hidden hand, those votes, because of some issue, never went actually through the whole process. What this meant was by that happening, sure, those who did vote got increased returns because there was a whole lot of votes that weren't counted. But importantly, the protocols who had provided their incentives across to hidden hand no longer actually got all the votes they were expecting, and so no longer had anywhere near the incentive efficiency you'll often see. In other words, if you were Stargate, the biggest incentive provider on hidden hand, and you only got, I'm going to make up a number, 50,000 votes instead of 300,000 votes, then what happens is your particular LP gets significantly less Aura and Balancer emissions, thereby reducing the APR, thereby reducing the overall liquidity that your pool has. Now, if you just paid, 140, 150,000 USD to basically get those votes, and you're getting that significant decrease because of a bug, this is the kind of thing that certainly undermines your confidence in how things play forward. It was for this reason that AIP 22 went forward, and essentially that sought to pause the votes to allow the hidden hand vote to come in over the top. It also allowed everybody else to re-vote so that they could better balance what they wanted to do as an individual and to what votes they want to do. Notably, though, there were a lot of interesting and very heated debates that occurred as a result of this. Some people felt that, if things are going to be immutable, then really you can't be pausing the votes on things to enable voters to vote, as well as a couple of people wondering if, in particular, some smaller protocols had forgotten to vote, if they would actually have the opportunity to have things paused. I think it's an interesting sort of discussion. My own personal view is that I think it was a good thing that they paused. I can understand the immutability argument, but by pausing it enables the whole system to function as intended. And I don't think anyone really missed out by doing this. So plenty to, if you want to discuss that or disagree with me, no dramas. You can chuck it, of course, on, forums where you can get involved. But I think, to be honest with you, the argument's kind of past now. In summary, though, all's well that ends well, I think, for this, and AIP22 has now completed. The most interesting news to come out of Aura, to my mind, recently is the new auraBAL compounder, so AIP21. What's exciting here is you've now got auraBAL, which is, once again, if you had vBAL, that's the on balance of how things are done. auraBAL is the maximum locked version that goes across to Aura. There's now an auraBAL auto compounder. Essentially what it does is it auto compounds your auraBAL straight back into itself, and then it also emits you Aura tokens. It does this by all the balancer and BBA USD, which is fees, that have been earned to your auraBAL position. Those are now used to market buy additional auraBAL and then emit those directly back to depositors. There's a 1% withdrawal fee, which is not surprising, of course, and prevents people from gaming the system. But notably, this is a significant benefit because it does a few different things. By market buying the auraBAL, it keeps auraBAL very much closer to peg. So in other words, it's very close to the same price as the 80-20 pool token. In other words, it stays the same price as vBAL and is not sold at a massive discount. It also helps to ensure that significantly more people want to now mint their auraBAL, and there's arbitrage opportunities in order to do that. So really what's happening here is more and more vBAL is now being minted across to auraBAL, providing, again, a greater set of pool capture for Aura. Now, this is the moat. The most important part about Aura, of course, is that the more auraBAL / vBAL they control, the more value there is in the Aura token itself. And with currently the total vBAL capture has now gone up over 28%. This is probably as a result of the dying down of that war with Humpy the Whale, but most notably because of this type of activity now, where you've got this market buy of auraBAL and people are starting to mint it more often. So very interesting stuff, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. The last one I'll show you again this a little bit shortly is the Aura compounders. Now, this is just my personal take here. Fact at the top there is if you have vote-locked Aura, so vlAura, at most, your returns each week are around about 6 cents. Now, if you look down at the bottom here, you'll see it's hovering around 6 cents since sort of early 2022. You'll note the latest round up at 9 cents. I think that's a bit skewy, though, like we talked about with regards to those missing hidden hand votes. So I don't get too excited there. But votes are generally hovering between sort of like 4 and 6 cents. With that said, if you have 1,000 Aura, that means you get $60 each epoch. With gas claiming and then trying to sell those returns, that takes up between 30 and 50% of that. So claiming your tokens might be $3 or $4, swapping them out could be another $8, $9, $10, and then trying to deposit them back into another vote-locked Aura position or whatever could be another $5, $10. So you could be losing again almost half of it. Problem here is, of course, the multiple times you do that, you're missing out on up to 50% of the reward basically that you've been receiving each time, and this significantly compounds over time. Now, there's a couple of different pounders out there, and I've given some examples that take small fees, but they do it for you. So the first one here is yet to be released. It should be released next week from the time of this video. But Jones DAO is about to release their jAura token, which is essentially, there's two different options. One is a standard sort of vanilla option, and the other is a tokenized representation of like a receipt token, basically, of your vote-locked Aura deposit. Both of them are very interesting. And as usual with Jones DAO, you've got unlimited sort of DeFi composability for that token. It'll be on mainnet. So for those of you who know that Jones DAO is an Arbitrum-based protocol, this will be a mainnet offering they provide. But you'll have the opportunity to either do the more vanilla staking or to grab your receipt token essentially for jAura and then put that into either additional LPs or other places. Badger and their more well-known product is the gravAura or the gravitationally bound Aura. That's again an auto compounder, so you can deposit your Aura and they'll emit back to you gravAura. What's interesting there is that the gravAura increases its own price over time, but also you don't need to claim as you go. So I'll show you that in a minute. And then finally, you've got Paladin, who allow you to delegate to them, and they have a means of auto compounding for you as well. But you'll need to have vote-locked Aura and then delegate across to them to go through their vote optimizer. So some interesting different options. I would suggest looking at any one of these, which suits your sort of style or vibe or whatever you want to do. Having a look at these if you have sort of 1,000 Aura or less. So I think you'll find it significantly better in the way they auto compound for you and basically taking away all those fees. Last thing I just want to highlight is just to show, looking at every week breeds new partnerships. If you're on crypto Twitter, you'll notice basically constantly new protocols coming in and announcing new partnerships, new integrations across with Aura. There's been a whole lot of stuff going on, in particular with Stargate Finance, who've been putting in some very hefty sort of incentives, as well as with Ohm. The latest stuff with Ohm is two interesting things. The first is their BLE, so their bootstrap liquidity engine, which is a very boosted liquidity engine, I should say, which is a new vote up for discussion at the moment. Essentially, they'll be providing additional reward tokens to those who stake in the Ohm wrap staked ETH pool. But you've also seen a sort of decrease in Ohm's direct, I suppose, incentive providing lately, or in the last round on Aura. And I don't know exactly why this is. I get the feeling that they might have had a deal with some very large vlAura holders and just basically bribed or incentivized them directly, which is interesting. And we'll see how that sort of plays out in the near future. But again, that's just Ohm seeking to do what's best for their protocol, noting that they're a very large treasury sort of DAO. Again, we've got our Aura demo wallet here. If you go across to Aura Finance here, the auraBAL staker that I spoke to you about before is this. So it's an auraBAL compounder. You can switch to Classic, which is the old version, but the new one gives you projected APR here, and it breaks it down. So the auraBAL itself is compounded at 16.5%, and then you get additional Aura on top of that at around 25.9. Currently, there's about a little over 2.5 million deposited in TVL in that particular area. So very interesting. Next part, as you're well aware, so if you wanted to use Paladin, for example, you would need to deposit here in the locked Aura and then delegate using the usual delegations here, which I've shown you in some of the previous videos. I just want to talk to you in terms of the locking is Badger DAO. Now, if you go across here, if you go to app.badger.com, you can see all the different pools here. They also have an auraBAL pounder. At this stage, I think the jury's out on what's more efficient, using this auto compounder or the one that Aura provide themselves. But again, the auraBAL one does it for you. And if you look at it here, you'll see it emits gravvAura, which auto compounds, which is a bonus, but then it compounds the Vault for you. So 17.55 is slightly higher in 0.2, but 0.42, I should say. But just note, these APRs change. I mean, they're not like this. It's not set in stone, the exact amount. It sort of goes up and down depending on deposits. Anyway, that can distract the gravvAura product itself. So one gravvAura token at the moment, if you look down here, token ratio is essentially one gravvAura token is equivalent to 1.07 Aura tokens. So that's because it's been auto compounding previously, and so it keeps some of it as it earns fees. But what you'll do is essentially you click on deposit. We have a balance of 72 Aura, and you would deposit, let's say, an amount in. Total deposit is 36 Aura. You'll deposit, they'll give you back the gravvAura token. What happens is each week or so, you'll click up here on the rewards and it'll show you your gravvAura rewards. But what's notable is you don't have to claim them for them to be included in terms of your compounding. So in other words, it's click and forget, and basically you don't have to touch it for some time. With that said, though, there are fees. There's a 10% fee here, bribe processing, underlying rewards fee, and then the withdrawal fee at 0%. So there is a fee for using that particular capability. If you go across to Warden and their quests, you can do something similar. The next voting around here. But again, in this instance, you'll lock that Aura like we talked about, and then click delegate here across to them. And then you'll delegate and they'll be able to provide additional rewards through to you that way. The last one is on on Jones, like I spoke about. The only drama is Jones haven't released. They had to delay their new token, the jAura. But what I'll look to do in the near future for everybody here is I'll set up a different sort of comparison indicators. So we'll do 20 in vote-locked Aura into Warden. We'll do 20 into Badger, and 20, I'll mix it up, whatever, so it's all even. So you can see the different ones, and then we'll use as the control, basically a standard delegation across to Hidden Hand. And you can see how things will play out. And if I show you the wallet, this is for a particular, when we previously had vote-locked Aura in our previous sets of videos, you can see the kind of rewards we've got here, like 1.4 Badger, a bit of Inverse Finance, 11.5 Stargate, a little bit of Rocket Pool. The problem with these amounts, of course, as you can see, is that to trade them, it'll cost me more on gas than I would actually get in swapping them out. So they kind of become dust, which is the problem, right? So that's kind of the key problem we want to sort of solve for. And we'll look to do that with a delegation sort of competition once the jAura stuff's released. Anyway, that's pretty much it for Aura. So a lot of interesting stuff going on. And anyway, I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.